it's Kendra back again with another video about packing light. All my prior videos have been centered around specific trips. I wish I was traveling all the time, but I'm not. So today, I don't have a trip to pack for. This is going to be something different. I had some comments on my recent videos asking about my packing process. And as I thought about it, I realized that my packing process starts long before I even plan a trip. So this may come as a surprise, but I haven't always been a light packer. I used to struggle to fit everything I needed for a week in a large checked luggage. But about 10 years ago, I started to travel more, and at the same time, I was getting interested in living a more minimalist lifestyle. So naturally, I began downsizing my travel bags too. I love making and watching packing videos, but something that I don't see talked about as much is the changes that you can make when you are just living your regular life at home that make packing so much easier when you do have a trip. Today, I wanted to talk about how over the years, I designed my wardrobe to be travel ready for any trip. Of course, we have to start talking about clothing. Now, I used to purchase clothes in any color under the sun, but I found myself constantly frustrated that I couldn't make outfits that I like. As I've gotten older, I've honed in on the colors that I feel best in and the color combinations that I like. Now, I've naturally developed a pretty precise color scheme in my wardrobe with neutrals, bright reds, and the occasional other statement piece. It's not a rule. I don't limit myself to changing these colors. For example, I used to wear a lot of black, but recently I've seen myself moving towards this dark brown color instead. And I also used to have a lot of light blue in my wardrobe as statement pieces, but I recently started getting rid of them because I just wasn't liking that color as much anymore. I've actually been moving more towards a green as another color in my wardrobe. Because I shop this way, I find that it doesn't take much thought to make outfits in my day-to-day or to build a capsule wardrobe for a trip. And everything just pretty much goes together. So my tips to implement this: before you go shopping, again, the first thing to do is declutter your closet. Don't just get rid of things. Take note of what colors, cuts, and styles you don't wear and which ones are left in your wardrobe after the declutter. And this will help you understand what works best for you. When you're shopping, you could use that information to pick items that you'll actually wear with your existing clothing. It may take some time. It honestly took me like a year or more to fully hone in on my color scheme when I first started this method. But if you do this every time you shop, you should eventually find that creating a travel capsule wardrobe for a trip barely takes any thought at all. When you're expecting a lot of different types of weather on a trip, it's really hard not to overpack, and all those what ifs come to mind, like what if I get hot? What if I get cold? What if it rains? The key to this is layers. And of course, I'm not the first person to say this, but I also want to talk about how choosing those layers is important. As I mentioned before, all the layered items should be able to be worn together, kind of in a similar color scheme. But I also find it helpful to find items that can be layered in different ways. For example, if you have a button-down shirt that you could layer over a t-shirt, oh, don't scratch that. Or maybe even under a sweater. Or you could layer them all together for colder weather. And that can take you through a variety of different temperatures, from mildly warm weather to the colder temperatures you might get in like late fall or a milder winter weather. It's also nice if each of these items can be worn on their own, because that gives you more flexibility in your outfit options. Don't be afraid to layer your outerwear as well. If you bring two lighter coats or a vest and a coat, they can be layered together, and then you have multiple options and you avoid having to bring a heavier, bulkier coat. Layers can be other things too. Scarves are one of my favorite multifunctional clothing pieces, like these thin square scarves. They can be obviously a scarf, or you can tie them into a top. You can tie them around your head as like a little headscarf, or for extra warmth if you don't have a hat. They can be used as belts, bag accessories, and the thicker scarves can be a scarf, a top. They can replace a hat as well, wrapped around your head. Could be a shawl, or even a blanket if you're in a pinch. I almost never go on a trip without one of these, or both. Next thing I want to talk about is materials of clothing in your wardrobe. A piece of packing advice I see a lot is to think about your destination before you pack, like the weather, the culture, the activities you'll do there. But another factor that I don't see talked about as often is, how do travelers do their laundry in that location. For me, there's two laundry questions that make a big difference in what materials I pack. First, is this a wash and fold destination or a self-service laundry location? Second, is it common for dryers to be used at this location? In my travels, I've noticed some patterns. I'm from the US, and what I've noticed traveling in this country is that a washer and dryer, either in accommodation or available for self-service somewhere nearby, is pretty common. When I traveled around Europe, I found laundry machines were pretty easily accessible in the accommodations or in self-service laundromats, but many homes or accommodations don't have dryers. Very occasionally, I did have to hand wash some clothing and hang dry it when I was in Europe. However, when I traveled in Central America, I found it was common for travelers to send their laundry to a local wash and fold and not do self-service. This is pretty different because you don't get to sort your own laundry into dry or no dry. And at these wash and folds, you usually have your clothes all washed together and dried together, sometimes on the hottest setting, unless you specifically request otherwise. Let me know if you've noticed this as well or what else you've noticed about other locations. But of course, look into your own destination because this is just like a general trend that I've seen and it might not be true everywhere you go. You can imagine that these two laundry styles require very different materials of clothing. If I'm going to a location where I'm most likely going to wash my own clothing in a washer or hand wash and then hang dry it, I like to bring natural fabrics that can be worn multiple times between the washes and that dry very quickly. So I like to bring merino wool, like this shirt, cotton, linen, and these are items that I will spend a little bit more money on sometimes so I can get a high quality item that will last. When I go to a wash and fold destination, I try to bring clothing and fabrics and styles that can withstand the dryer. I don't prefer synthetics, but often polyester pants like these ones work well. I also will wear thicker pre-shrunk cotton shirts. And I find that my cotton and cotton blend sweatshirts, heavyweight sweatshirts, tend to work well as well. But of course, make sure to check the label of the item and see if it's recommended to tumble dry that item. And I would absolutely avoid any sort of wool, whether it's merino wool or a sweater or anything like that, because that will probably degrade and shrink in the dryer. I also try finding these items at lower prices and usually shop secondhand because I find they will wear out more quickly with the rougher washing methods, like using hot water or drying them in the dryer. In fact, actually all of these items I purchased secondhand. This is so important because I see wool recommended all the time as the best fabric for travel, but to me it really depends on how you plan to do your washing at your destination. I will say that once I purchased a few high quality merino wool pieces that really made a difference in my light packing, and that was what first allowed me to make the jump from a carry-on to personal item only for long trips. Some of my favorite wool items are the shirt that I've been showing this whole video. It's this short sleeve t-shirt from Ridge Merino. And then I also have a tank top with a little built-in bralette from Ridge Merino. I have a couple pair of merino wool socks that I like to wear because I can usually get away with wearing them 2, maybe 3 times before I wash them, as long as I air them out in between. These are some regular socks that are pretty thick from Darn Tough. They're good for more wintry trips. And then these are from the brand Toto. They're toe socks. And these are the only merino wool toe socks I've seen so far. I also have a merino wool dress from Icebreaker. For my colder weather trips, I like to bring a big wool sweater, like this vintage one that I found on Etsy, and then I'll bring a bunch of thin t-shirts to layer underneath it. And that way I don't have to pack as many bulky items. I can just pack the little t-shirts in the bag and I wear the sweater on the plane, and that saves a ton of space in my bag. So what does this mean for when you're shopping in your day-to-day life? I try to look for items that fit at least one of 2 requirements. First, can they be worn more than once before they are washed? And second, they need to not be delicate, meaning they can be machine washed and tumble dried. That way, all of my clothes work for travel, either to an air dry location or a wash and fold location, or if I'm really lucky, both. Next up, shoes. When I'm shopping for shoes, I only buy comfortable shoes. There was a time not too long ago in my life when I loved a pair of killer heels or boots to make an outfit. But honestly, these days, I just can't be bothered to wear uncomfortable shoes. I never want my feet hurting to limit me from doing something that I want to do. So any shoe that I purchase must be comfortable to walk in, at least for a little bit, and to stand in for several hours, no matter how cute they are. I also prefer to buy shoes that are multi-purpose. When I'm packing in a tiny bag, there usually just isn't room for an extra pair of shoes. So when I'm shoe shopping, I try to find shoes that I can dress up or down for a range of occasions, both in my day-to-day life and while traveling. This helps me keep my travel bags light, but also helps me not have too many pairs of shoes in my closet. For example, I have these chunky Converse that I bought before I was more of a barefoot shoe girl. And I loved these for travel because they were super comfortable to walk in, but they're also a little bit edgy and easy to dress up for a night out. I also have these Birkenstocks, and they've definitely seen better days, but they are my go-to sandal for almost all occasions, and they work great for warm weather trips as well. And you just can't go wrong with a classic casual white sneaker. It works really great for city trips, and it usually can transition to like a dinner or a nightlife spot in most places, as long as you're not going to the bougiest place you can find. I also tend to buy my shoes in neutral tones. I don't think this is a hard and fast rule. Maybe someday I'll buy a colorful shoe, but I do have some pops of color, and for me, it would just be harder to make all my outfits match if I have to worry about whether or not my statement pieces will clash with my shoes. I think there's lots of people who I see make fantastic outfits mixing bold colors, but whenever I try it, it just doesn't feel like me, so I stick with neutral shoes. But since this is so much up to your personal preference, my biggest tip really is just to keep in mind when you're shopping for shoes, whether or not you would want to wear that pair of shoes for 2 weeks straight on your next trip. And my last little hack is to use a waterproofing spray. So these are just waterproofing sprays that I've picked up from my local REI, and they've worked on all the shoes that I've wanted to waterproof so far. I use a waterproofing spray because if I'm only gonna bring one pair of shoes on a trip, I know it's gotta hold up against at least a light rain. So these treatments help them do that, and I just spray it on my shoes right before my trip. And that's it. The first part of my packing process, the planning, is basically finished just because I keep it in mind whenever I'm shopping. Now when I start packing for a trip, I know I already have all the clothes that I need for the perfect travel capsule wardrobe every time. I don't have to go out and shop for my next trip. I hope this was helpful and that maybe it got you to think about travel shopping in a different way. Thanks for watching. Where's Tess? They're so cozy. Hey, travel girly.